George Carlin's The American Dream documentary series premiered last month on HBO Max. I just feel like it was about time to start talking about my thoughts on the documentary. George Carlin is one of those comedians that I wanted to learn more about, that I wanted to know more things about him that I didn't know. And this documentary helped a lot. I haven't read any of his books. I might buy it in the future. But George Carlin is one of the greatest comedians of all time, one of the greatest stand-up comedians of all time. And if he were alive to see the shit show that's going on in today's society, he would be saying, "I told you so." Or maybe he's just rolling over his grave right now by the ridiculousness that's going on today. But documentary American Dream, there's two parts. Part one, it talks about his early beginnings, his upbringing, and it was interesting because in the 60s he was more as the clean-cut type of comedian, but then he decided to be more edgier in the 70s. And then in part two, you have him in the documentary, it talks about his cocaine addiction, his wife's alcohol problems, and their daughter, who was pretty much a big part of this documentary. She breaks down of all the moments that has taken place at home with both of her parents. But through it all, they stuck by each other's side. George Carlin stood by her side until her death. But George Carlin, he was just a magician on stage. He didn't care the backlash that he would receive. Whatever he's saying is not to make you think, but he wants you to know what he thinks. So George Carlin, he was fearless, and a lot of comedians don't have that today, thanks to social media, the internet, political correctness, Twitter mob, the woke mafia. But George Carlin, he didn't give a damn. He was a comedian at the right time because they didn't have no social media or anything like that back then. But I think even today he would be fearless. But that's just my opinion. But if you haven't seen the documentary, I highly recommend it that you do so. It's long. It took me a couple of days to complete it because I want to make sure that I focus on everything for both episodes of this documentary series. But it's unbelievable to learn so much about George Carlin through this documentary. And like I said, I don't have any of his books, but I'm curious. After watching this documentary series, I'm curious to see whether his books are better and are more expressive, or the documentary is better than the book, or whatever. But for some people, it's nothing new because they know so much about him. But me personally, like I said, he's one of those comedians that I wanted to know more about because I was never big on George Carlin like the way I am with Dave Chappelle, Eddie Murphy, and the list goes on and on. But George Carlin, obviously, you know, he deserves his flowers, and in my opinion, belongs in the Mount Rushmore for stand-up comedy. One of the things that I found interesting in the documentary is there was this stand-up that he did where he shortly talked about the comparison of him and Richard Pryor, because both of them have had health issues, so he incorporated that in his material. And George Carlin and Richard Pryor, to me, are like neck to neck when it comes to stand-up comedy. But I'll give the edge to George Carlin in the sense of longevity. But yeah, I mean, I would have wished to like more in the documentary to talk about George Carlin and any interactions that he's had with other comedians aside from Richard Pryor. Chris Rock mentioned a little bit things about him, but I don't know. I mean, the documentary was great overall, but I wish if there was at least a little bit more touched on any connection that he made with other big comedians. But I understand that for every movie, every documentary, every show, you can't always touch on everything, and certain things will be left out. But yeah, that's just my opinion on it. Thank you for watching this video. Make sure you like, comment, or subscribe to this channel.